Good morning. I am A.S. Revati, PhD Scholar, Department of Education and Psychology, Tamil Nadu Teacher Education University, Karapakkam, Chennai. My guide, Dr. P. Lakshmi Shanmugam, Assistant Professor, Department of Education and Psychology, Tamil Nadu Teacher Education University, Karapakkam. Today my topic, Developmental Theory for Vygotsky Theory. Objectives. After completing this model, the prospective teachers are able to acquire knowledge about the developmental theory of Vygotsky, understand under the terms, concept and the role of social interaction in cognitive development, apply the knowledge to analyze the functions of zone of proximal development, develop skills in the preparation of zone of proximal development according to Vygotsky, develop interest in knowing the features of developmental theory, develop desirable positive attitude towards the scaffolding. Introduction. The major theme of Vygotsky's theoretical framework is that social interaction plays a fundamental role in the development of cognition. First one, role of social interaction in cognitive development, more knowledgeable to others, MKO, zone of proximal development, ZPD, and scaffolding. Lev Vygotsky Developmental Theory. The work of Lev Vygotsky 1934 has become the foundation of much research and theory in cognitive development. Over the past several decades, particularly of what has become known as social development theory. Lev Vygotsky 1896 ஆண்டு நவம்பர் 17 ரஷ்ய பேரரசு உட்பட்ட தொகுதியான பெலாரஸ் அப்படின்ற ஓர்ஷியா என்ற இடத்துல பிறந்தாரு. வைகாட்ஸ்கி ஒரு சிறந்த உளவியல் முன்னோடியா இருந்திருக்காரு. அவருடைய அழகான ஆய்வின் பலனா அறிவாற்றல் வளர்ச்சியின் மிக அத்தியாவசியமான கோட்பாடு உருவாகியது. குழந்தைகளுடைய சிந்தனை திறன் அவர்களுடைய சமுதாய அறிவினால் பாதிக்கப்படுகிறது. அவை மொழி, எண்கள், கலை போன்ற உளவியல் தொடர்புகளோ அல்லது புத்தகங்கள், கணிப்பொறி போன்ற தொடர்புகளாலோ தொடர்புபடுத்தப்படுகிறதுன்னு வைகாட்ஸ்கி வலியுறுத்துகிறார். அவர் ஒரு கருத்துவாதி என்று அவருடைய சிந்தனை திறன் மொழியினாலே ஆட்கொள்ளப்படுகிறது என்று மிகைப்படுத்தப்பட்ட கருத்து என்ற இவரை பற்றின விமர்சனமாகும். Vygotsky theory stresses the fundamental role of social interaction in the development of cognition, as he believed strongly that community play a central role in the process of making meaning. Unlike Piaget's notion that children's development must necessarily precede their learning, Vygotsky argued learning is a necessary and universal aspect for the process of developing cultural organized, specifically human psychological foundation. In other words, social learning tends to precede development. Vygotsky has developed a socio-cultural approach to cognitive development. He developed his theories at around the same time as Jean Piaget was starting to develop his ideas, but he died at the age of 38, and so his theories are incomplete, although some of this writing are still being translated from Russian. Vygotsky socio-cultural theory. No single principle can account of development. Individual development cannot be understood without references to the social and cultural context within which it is embedded. Higher mental processes in the individual have their origin in social process. Piaget and Vygotsky theory. Defining characteristic. Status development derive learning learner center. Vygotsky social interaction zone of proximal development learning drives development. Mechanism of change. Piaget innate development stages assimilation, accommodation, equilibration. Vygotsky's scaffolding social interaction, cultural development, internalization. Readiness. Genetic development growth, biological stage as to developmental appropriate. Zone of proximal development has to contain the capabilities that are beginning thought scaffolding. Role of student. Actively manipulate objectives, ideas, continually reinvents knowledge through interactions with the world. Interact with the instructor, peers, and socio-cultural agreement to solve problems. Role of teacher and classroom. Provide an environment that encourages students to interact and ask probing questions. Engage, learn in socially organized activity providing scaffolding for a learner. Endpoints. Hypothetically, everyone can reach the endpoint. Learning how to learn and how to think. Vygotsky theory differs from that of Piaget in a number of important ways. Number one, Vygotsky places more emphasis on cultural affective cognitive development. This contradicts Piaget's view of universal stages and content of development. Hence, Vygotsky assumes cognitive development varies across cultures, whereas Piaget states cognitive development is mostly universal across cultures. Number two, Vygotsky places considerable more emphasis on socio-factual contribution to cognitive development. Vygotsky states cognitive development stems from social interactions for guided learning within the zone of proximal development as children and their parents constructed knowledges. In construct, Piaget maintained that cognitive development stems largely from independent exploration in which children construct knowledge for their own. For Vygotsky, the environment in which children grow up will influence how they link and what they think about. Third one, Vygotsky places more emphasis on the role of language in cognitive development. According to Piaget, language depends on thought for development. That is, thoughts come before language. For Vygotsky, thought and language are initially separate systems from the beginning of life, merging at around 3 years of age, providing verbal thought, inner speech. For Vygotsky, cognitive development results from an Internalized of language. Number 4. According to Vygotsky, adults are an important source of cognitive development. Adults transmit their cultural tools for intellectual adaptation that children internalize. In contrast, Piaget emphasizes the importance of learning as for interaction promoting social prospective techniques. Effects of cultures. Tools of intellectual adaptation. Like Piaget, Vygotsky claimed that infants are born with the basic materials, abilities for intellectual development. Piaget focused on motor relaxers and the sensory abilities. Leo Vygotsky refers to elementary mental functions, attention, sensation, perception, and memory also. Basic cognitive process. Attention, sensation, perception, attention, and memory. Look at the picture. Eventually, though, interaction within the socio-cultural environment, these are developmental into more sophisticated and effective mental process strategies which he refers to high mental functions. For example, memory in young children, this is limited by biological factors. However, cultural determinants the type of memory strategy we develop. Example, in our culture we learn not taking to aid memory, but in pre-literature societies. Other strategies must be developed such as tying notes in a string to remember, or carrying bubbles, or repetitions for the name of ancestor in its large number can be repeated. Vygotsky refers to tools in intellectual adaptation. These allow children to use the basic mental functions more effectively, adaptively, and there are culturally determined. Example, memory, mnemonic, mind maps also. Vygotsky therefore sees cognitive functions, even those carried out along, as affected by the belief values and tools and intellectual adaptation of the culture in which a person develops, and therefore socio-culturally determined. The tools of intellectual adaptation therefore vary from culture to culture, as in the memory. Examples: mnemonic device, rhymes, chunking, clustering, imagery, acrostic, acronyms also. Social influence of cognitive development. Like Piaget, Vygotsky believes the young children are crucial or actively involved in their own learning and the discovery and development of new understandings in However, Vygotsky places more emphasis on social contribution to the process of development, whereas Piaget emphasizes self-initiated discovery. According to Vygotsky, much important learning by the child occurs through social interaction with a skillful tutor. The tutor may model behavior and or provide verbal instructions for the child. Vygotsky refers to this as cooperative or collaborative dialogue. The child seeks the child seeks to understand the actions or instructions provided by the tutor, then internalized the information using it to guide or regulate their own performances. Example picture. Own performances. Shafter gives the example for a young girl who is given her first rehearsals. Alone, she performed poorly in attempting to solve the puzzle. The father then sits with her and describes or demonstrates some basic strategies, such as finding all the corner edges, pieces, and provides a couple of pieces for the child to put together herself, and after encouragement when she does so. As the child becomes more competent, the father allows the child to work more independently. According to Vygotsky, this type of social interaction involving cooperative or collaborative dialogues promotes cognitive development. In order to gain an understanding of Vygotsky theories on cognitive development, one must understand two of the main principles of Vygotsky work: the more knowledgeable other and the zone of proximal development. More knowledgeable others, MKO. The most knowledgeable others is somewhat self-explanatory. It refers to some who has a better understanding or a higher ability level than the learner with respect to particular task, process, or concept. Although the implication is that the MKO is a teacher or an older adult. This is not necessarily the case. Many times a child, peers, or an adult children may be the individual with more knowledge or experiences. more knowledgeable to other. Example picture. The more knowledgeable other is a person that has more knowledgeable or ability than the learner does that can help the learner learn. For example, who is more likely to know more about the newest teenage music group, how to win at the most recent PlayStation game, or how to correctly perform the newest dance crazy a child or their parent. In fact, the MPO need not be a person at all. Some companies to support employee in their learning process are now using electronic performance support systems. Electronic tutorials have also been used in educational settings to facilitate and guide students through the learning process. The key to MKOs is that they must have more knowledge about the topic being learned than the learner does. Zone of proximal development. The concept of the more knowledgeable other is intricately related to the second important principle of Vygotsky work, the zone of proximal development. அண்மை வளர்ச்சி மண்டலம் அப்படின்னு சொல்லலாம். This is an important concept that related to the difference between what a child can achieve independently and what a child can achieve with guidance and encouragement for a skilled partner. Example picture. Zone of proximal development and scaffolding. Knowledgeable to others, technology and tools. What I can learn with the help of ZPD. Beyond my reach, what I can learn on my own. Vygotsky see the zone of proximal development as the area where the most sensitive instructions or guidance should be given, allowing the child to develop skills they will then use on their own, developing higher mental functions. Vygotsky also views interaction with peers as an effective way of developing skills and strategies. He suggests that teachers used cooperative learning exercise with where less competent children develop with the help from more skillful peers within the zone of proximal development. Teacher role. அண்மை வளர்ச்சி மண்டலம் அப்படின்றதுல தற்போதைய வளர்ச்சி, வளம் செறிந்த வளர்ச்சி, தற்போதைய எட்டும் நிலைக்கு அப்பாற்பட்ட வளர்ச்சி, இது மூணு மிக முக்கியங்க. இந்த கோட்பாட்டுல முக்கியமான மற்றொரு காரணி சாரம் கட்டுதல் அப்படின்னு சொல்றாங்க. ஒரு குழந்தை ஒரு பெரியோர் உதவும் போது அக்குழந்தையின் முன்னேற்றத்தை பொறுத்து அவர் அளிக்கும் உதவிய இருவரும் விரும்பத்தக்க முறையில சரிபடுத்திக் கொள்ளுவார்கள். சான்றாக ஒரு குழந்தை நடக்க பழகும் பொழுது முதல்ல அதன் இரு கைகளையும் பிடித்து மேல் நோக்கி இழுக்கப்படுகிறது. அது தன் எடையை தானே சமாளிக்கும் திறனை கற்றவுடன் அதன் தாய் இரு கைகளையும் தளர்த்தி பிடித்துக் கொள்ளுகிறார்கள். பிறகு ஒரு கரத்தை மட்டும் பிடித்துக் கொள்வார்கள். அதன் பிறகு கரங்களை பிடித்துக் கொள்வதில்லை. இந்த படிப்படியான வேறுபட்ட நிலைகளில் அளிக்கப்படும் உதவிகளை தான் நம்ம சாரம் கட்டுதல் அப்படின்னு சொல்றோம். இது ஒரு கட்டடம் கட்டுப்படுவதற்கு பயன்படும் சாரம் கட்டுவதற்கு ஒப்பாகும். ஒரு புதிய கட்டுமானத்திற்கு உதவுகிறது. அந்த கட்டுமான பணி நிறைவு பெற்றவுடன் சாரம் நீக்கப்படுகிறது. அதாவது ஒரு திறன் அல்லது தகவல் அவங்களுக்கு சொல்லிக் கொடுக்கிறோம். திறன் தகவல் அவங்க கத்துக்கிட்ட உடனே அந்த உதவியானது நிறுத்தப்படுது. இதுதான் வைகாட்ஸ்கியுடைய zone of proximal development. Some evidence for Vygotsky and zone of proximal development. Freud conducted a study in which children had to decide which items of furniture should be placed in particular area of a doll's house. Some children were allowed to play with their mother in a similar situation before they attempted its alone zone of proximal development, while others were allowed to work on this by themselves. Freud found that those who had previously worked with the mother showed the greatest improvement compared with the first attempt at the task. The conclusion being the guided learning within the ZPD lead to greater understanding or performance than working alone. Zone of proximal development. Example pictures. Zone of proximal development. Inaccessible task or solo task. Vygotsky and language. Vygotsky believed that language developed from social interactions for communication purpose. Vygotsky viewed language as man's creator's tool, a mean of communication with the outside world. Example picture. Communication should be must to one, linked to outside world. Scaffolding. What the children can do in cooperative today, he can do it alone tomorrow. That's the scaffolding. When scaffolding, the MKO becomes a support the tool for the student in the zone of proximal development. I provide support, I function as a tool, I extend the range of the workers. It also to accomplish a task, otherwise impossibility. It is used selectively when needed. Scaffolding. Different definitions for scaffolding. Vygotsky defined scaffolding instructions as the role of teachers and others in the supporting the learner development and providing support structures to get to that next stage or level. Teachers provide a scaffolding so that the learner can accomplish certain tasks they would otherwise not be able to accomplish on their own. The goal of the educator is for the student to become an independent learner and problem solver. How can we practically apply Vygotsky theory in our everyday classroom? Example picture. Classroom applications. A contemporary educational applications of Vygotsky theory is reciprocal teaching used to improve students' ability to learn from text. In the method, teachers and students collaborate in learning and practicing for a key skill, summarizing questions, classifying and predicting. The teacher's role in the process is reduced over time. Also, Vygotsky is relevant to instructional concepts such as scaffolding and apprenticeship, in which teachers are more advanced per help to structures or arrange a task so that the noise can work on successfully. Vygotsky theory also feed into the current interest in collaborative learning, suggesting that group members should have different level of ability, so more advanced peer can help less advanced member operate within the ZPD, zone of proximal development. Critical evaluation. Vygotsky work has not received the same level of intense security that Piaget has, partially due to the time-consuming process of translating Vygotsky work for Russian. Also, Vygotsky's socio-cultural perspective does not provide as many specific hypotheses to test and dive Piaget theory, making refutations difficult if not impossible. Perhaps the main criticism of Vygotsky work concerns the assumption that it is relevant to all cultural. Rogoff dismissed the idea that Vygotsky ideas are culturally universal and instead state the concept of scaffolding, which is heavily depends on verbal instruction, may not be equally useful in all cultures of all type of learning. Indeed, in some instance, observation and practice may be more effective way of learning certain skills. Summary. The major theme of Vygotsky theoretical framework is the social interaction play a fundamental role in the development of cognition. 1. Role of social interaction in cognitive development. 2. More knowledgeable to others. 3. Zone of proximal development. 4. Scaffolding. Educational implication of teachers for Vygotsky theory. Adults and peers are critical to the learning process through scaffolding, assisted learning, providing strategical help in the initial stage of learning, gradually admonishing a student again independence. Teaching in the zone, not too hard, not too easy, but just right. Some references for book. Check your progress. True or false? Question 1. Vygotsky has developed a socio-cultural approach to cognitive development. It's true or false? Answer is true. Yes, Vygotsky has developed a socio-cultural approach to cognitive development. Question number 2. Vygotsky refers to tool of intellectual adaptation. These allow children to use memory mnemonics mind maps. True or false? Answer is true. Vygotsky refers to tools for intellectual adaptation. These allow children to use memory mnemonics, mind map also. Is it true? Thank you.